Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea's Trade Minister Yoo Myung-hee is reportedly one of two final candidates to take over as Director General of the World Trade Organization. A decision is due out Thursday in Geneva. South Korea posts a current account surplus in August for a seventh straight month. Exports were down, but imports were down even more. And Samsung Electronics comes out with estimated earnings for the third quarter higher than they've been in 2 years. A boost from the U.S. sanctions on Huawei and a rebound in its mobile business. It's 5 o'clock p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. The number of COVID-19 cases reported in South Korea was back below 100 on Thursday, but there are concerns again that the upcoming three-day weekend could lead to another wave of infections. This Sunday, special virus prevention measures for the holidays will be over, and so the government will announce what the policy will be going forward. Bae Eun-ji reports.
South Korea reported 69 new COVID-19 cases on Thursday. Of them, 60 were locally transmitted and 9 were from overseas. It's a significant drop compared to the day before, when the number of new cases broke the 100 mark after 6 straight days of double-digit figures. But officials warned against complacency as cluster infections continue to be seen mainly in military bases and hospitals. Health officials are especially concerned over the upcoming three-day weekend, while the so-called silent transmission from the Chuseok holiday may still be spreading nationwide. There were several infections between family members during the Chuseok holiday when many traveled across the country. There are also worries that cases could rise in popular vacation spots such as Jeju Island and Gangwon-do province throughout this week. Among Thursday's locally transmitted cases, 46 came from Seoul and its surrounding areas, including Gyeonggi-do province and Incheon.
The outbreak in the greater Seoul area is not over yet. We ask everyone to refrain from large gatherings and events, to avoid contact with a lot of people during the long weekend.
The total number of confirmed cases now stands at 24,422. There were 2 more deaths, raising the death toll to 427. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in has called once again for the parties to the Korean War to officially declare the conflict over. Combat in the war ended in 1953, but only with an armistice. This was in a speech President Moon gave Wednesday virtually to a meeting of the Korea Society, a nonprofit group based in the U.S., and he expressed hope that South Korea and the U.S. can work together to that end. Kim Min-ji reports.
President Moon Jae-in has expressed hope South Korea and the U.S. can cooperate toward a declaration formally ending the 1950-53 Korean War, saying it'll pave the way for peace and make their alliance even greater. He made the remarks Wednesday during a virtual keynote speech for the 2020 annual gala of the Korea Society, a nonprofit organization based in New York that works to enhance ties between Seoul and Washington.
한반도 종전 선언을 위해 양국이 협력하고 국제사회의 적극적인 동참을 이끌게 되길 희망합니다. 전쟁을 억제하는 것뿐 아니라 적극적으로 평화를 만들고 제도화할 때 우리의 동맹은 더욱 위대해질 것입니다.
Noting the stalled peace drive on the peninsula, President Moon said the allies could not backtrack on their hard-earned progress. The president added that South Korea will engage in close communication and coordination with the U.S., as well as continue efforts to build trust with North Korea with an open mind and heart. As for Seoul-Washington relations, President Moon said the alliance has become stronger and more mature over the past 67 years, with the allies cooperating on both regional and global issues. He stressed that it's time to take relations to another level, noting President Donald Trump's decision to invite South Korea to the next G7 summit.
양국 간의 깊은 상호 신뢰를 바탕으로 국제적 위상에 걸맞은 한국의 책임과 역할을 요구한 것으로 생각합니다.
President Moon added that Seoul will live up to these expectations and join concerted global efforts to beat the COVID-19 pandemic. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
South Korea's Trade Minister Yoo Myung-hee has reportedly made it onto the final list of candidates running to lead the World Trade Organization as Director General. Choi Jung-yoon reports.
The final two candidates running for the World Trade Organization's new chief have reportedly been selected. And one of them is South Korea's Trade Minister Yoo Myung-hee, according to Bloomberg sources. The Geneva-based trade body plans to formally announce the results to its delegates at its closed meeting Thursday morning local time. During her campaign, Yoo vowed to focus on rebuilding trust in the multilateral trade system by making it, quote, more relevant, resilient, and responsive if she becomes a new WTO leader.
WTO needs to be more responsive to global challenges and contingencies for the benefit of all its members.
Also on the shortlist with Yoo is Nigeria's Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, a former managing director of the World Bank who also served as her country's finance and foreign affairs minister. The two candidates, both female, means the WTO will be led by a woman for the first time in its 25-year history. If Yoo gets a nod, she will also be the first South Korean in the position. The third and final phase of the consultation process will begin later this month, with the result likely before November 7th. If WTO members are unable to select a leader by consensus, a vote requiring a qualified majority could be held as a last resort, which would be an unprecedented development for the organization. Choi Jung-yun, Arirang News.
Starting today, South Korea and Japan are resuming business travel between them without the need for visitors to self-isolate for 2 weeks on arrival. This is South Korea's latest fast-track agreement. South Korean business people heading to Japan will need to test negative for the coronavirus within 72 hours of boarding their flight. Seoul has already established similar fast-track systems with China, the UAE, Indonesia, and Singapore. South Korea managed to post a current account surplus in August for the fourth consecutive month, but this was because imports fell more than exports. The Bank of Korea said Thursday that the country's current account surplus came to around $6.6 billion, up $1.7 billion on year. Exports fell more than 10% from a year earlier, but imports were down even more by 17%. The deficit in the service account was smaller in August than in July by about $800 million because fewer Koreans traveled overseas. South Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics not only beat market expectations in its guidance for the third quarter, but has also posted its largest operating profit in 2 years. It also expects its third quarter sales to hit an all-time high. Ji-young has more.
Samsung Electronics, in its guidance for the third quarter, has reported its largest operating profit in 2 years. According to the company's earnings guidance on Thursday, it expects to make more than $10.6 billion in operating profit for the July to September period. That's a whopping 58% jump from what it posted during the same period last year. It's Samsung's first quarterly operating profit to top 10 trillion won, or $8.6 billion, since the fourth quarter of 2018, the period deemed as the boom time for the global semiconductor industry. Samsung Electronics also forecasts its third quarter sales to reach an all-time high, $57 billion. Analysts say solid global sales of Samsung's home appliances and the latest smartphone series were behind the strong earnings.
The company's improved semiconductor business performance, strong sales of premium products, and enhanced marketing strategies for smartphones and TVs might have helped Samsung post such high earnings.
Samsung's marketing expenses have dropped as costs for operating offline stores have declined as online sales jumped during the COVID-19 pandemic. Solid global sales of Samsung's latest smartphone series also contributed to the strong earnings. The analyst also said the U.S. sanctions on Chinese tech giant Huawei have benefited Samsung in terms of smartphone sales. However, earnings in the fourth quarter are expected to drop.
In the fourth quarter, marketing expenses are forecast to rise and performance in the semiconductor sector is forecast to decline compared to the third quarter.
But he added that semiconductor prices are expected to rise in the first half of 2021, and thus a more positive performance is forecast. Ji-young, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Kim Se-won, professor of economics at Ewha Women's University. Professor Kim, good to have you back on.
Good afternoon, Devin.
We were just hearing about the earnings estimates from Samsung for the third quarter. Operating profits highest they've been in 2 years, despite all that's going on. What's driving all this business to Samsung?
In the third quarter of this year, as we just heard from the report, Samsung Electronics recovered over $10 billion quarterly profit in 2 years. It is almost 60% earning increase compared to the same period in the previous year. And that means also Samsung became another company that has more than $10 billion profit in 3 months, along with Apple of the United States. Samsung Electronics expectation-breaking earnings came from huge increase in mobile sales and solid sales of memory chips under COVID crisis. Also, consumer electronics division sales doubled in third quarter. That also helped the increase of the operation profit.
A remarkable performance for sure. Now, stocks on Wall Street were up overnight as President Trump said he'd be pushing for new stimulus, quite unlike what he was saying the day before. Mixed results coming out from American companies, though. What's the story in the global markets?
U.S. stock climbed as Mr. Trump appears to soften his stance on further stimulus package. Actually, he called upon more fiscal supports on airline industries, small corporation salary protection program, and more cash support on COVID-hit households. Dow Jones Industrial increased 1.9% yesterday, which is a huge increase, and Nasdaq also increased at the same rate of 1.9% in yesterday's market.
And now the Kospi up today as well here in Korea, taking its cue from Wall Street. What was behind the rise today in local stocks?
Including today's trading, Kospi had 7 straight days positive returns. Today's domestic market is affected by U.S. market's huge gains yesterday. Particularly, foreign investors were main buyers in today's market. Kospi and Kosdaq both increased by 0.2% in today's market.
And now another big story of the day, South Korea posting another current account surplus in August, the 4th month in a row we're in the black, but it's really because imports fell so much more than exports. Tell us about that, Professor.
The current account surplus reached $6.6 billion in August. And that means the Korean economy had 4 straight months current account surplus in August. It looks fine as it is, but it actually represents Korean economy's weakening trade with other countries. As you said, export declined at a slower pace than import did in the middle of major economies reopenings after pandemic lockdowns. But since global trading is rebounding from August, along with China's export increase almost 10% in the middle of August, there is strong expectation on Korean export also rebounding from September.
And we had another positive sign yesterday. Fitch Ratings deciding to keep its sovereign rating for Korea at AA-, its 4th highest level, and its outlook for Korea steady. But this came with warnings about the government taking on debt. What do you make of this story?
Global credit appraiser Fitch Ratings said Wednesday it has decided to keep Korea's credit rate at AA- with a stable outlook. This level is the 4th highest level of sovereign rating, along with Belgium and UK. Fitch said the COVID-19 pandemic has weighed on Korean economic growth and public debt, but economic deterioration is limited compared to other countries, according to Fitch's analysis. But Fitch gave a warning on fast increasing government debt, which can be kind of risk in the future credit rating. So in this respect, it is a good thing that government decided to implement numerical rules for fiscal sounding.
Yeah, that was an interesting proposal from the government this week. All right, Professor Kim, we'll have to leave it there for today. We'll catch up again next week. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Now, the Federal Reserve has expressed concern that the U.S. economic recovery will slow down if there's no more economic stimulus. According to the minutes of last month's meeting of the Federal Open Market Committee, the latest outlook assumed that there would be additional COVID-19 fiscal support. And if there isn't, members said growth would decline. Members also said that the recovery would slow down if future fiscal support was substantially smaller or arrives later than it planned. To commemorate Hangul Day, the city of Seoul is putting on an exhibition of poems written and illustrated by senior citizens who were late learning to read, having been deprived of opportunities when they were young. These poems include touching stories from their lives and messages of hope. There are 35 poems, and they'll be put online twice, on Thursday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on Friday from 6 p.m. until 10 the next morning. The website is all in Korean, but to find it, search for Kakao Gallery Grandma Poem, now written on your screen. And that does it for this newscast. Thank you for watching.